What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Seoulweaver Webcast. Showing up a little late, extremely late. I was about to get this started at about 8:10, and I was almost proud of myself. I was like, "Yo, anybody who knows me sees me coming in 10 minutes late. They're gonna be like, hey, it's pretty much on time for Will." But not the case. Anyway, it is Thursday, 8:39 p.m. And I had so many things planned well, I'll still probably go through all these things, but I'm going to get interrupted. My wife and my son are probably going to end up coming into the door or coming into the room sometime during this actual broadcast. But for those of you who are unaware, I am changing the format of the podcast. Actually, let me do a little double checking before we get started with this and start explaining stuff. And none of it's there. You may hear a little bit of echo. And you guys really got to understand, I don't quite know what I'm doing. It is Thursday. There we go. But yeah, so I've changed the manner in which I'm doing my podcast. I actually run a podcast about life in Korea. And I have been trying to, I've been fighting with the podcast lately. It hasn't shown up as what I want it to be. It's been pretty good. I've been able to get my input out to people a lot, but actually, I'm going to go ahead and share this while I'm talking. But I found myself just wanting a little bit more out of the podcast. I wanted to give you insight from other people, other expats and things like that. And I tell you what, when it really came out that this is something that I wanted to do, I actually was at a YouTube party and was talking to other expats, and they had like such great stories that I really just wanted to kind of talk to them and share that information with them. You can probably hear me typing in there, huh? I really want to talk to them and kind of get them to come onto the show, share their stories, what brought them to Korea, because they're all doing different things. And even though my story is, I don't know, it's not boring, but I was going to go into that today and kind of explain to you guys what brought me to Korea and everything like that. But since I'm late, I'm just going to jump into the second half of the show, which is the current events and random social media shares and things like that, and kind of give you my input on them. So let me just jump right into that. Actually, share this on the Seoulweavers page really quick because I'm kind of cheating on them by doing this on YouTube. I normally did the last couple of weeks. I've done this in the Seoulweavers Facebook group. You can go ahead and join that by getting on Facebook and joining or searching for Seoulweavers. But usually I just kind of do it with them because I've been trying to figure out what's the best route to go about putting this together. And now I've bitten off a little more than I can chew. I got like Ustream or Restream.io, and I'm trying to like feed things into the events, and that's what caused me to be extremely late. But everything kind of still goes on from where it is from there. So on to the current events. I've shared that in the group. On to the current events. Transition here. So let's go ahead and start off with an update on North Korea. So North Korea they've been obviously on one lately, right? They've testing out nuclear explosion, testing out nuclear bombs, shooting up missiles and things like that, intercontinental missiles and ballistic missiles, and they're obviously in grand pursuit of their nuclear system, a nuclear triad or whatever it is that they are trying to develop, their nuclear program. Constantly, there have been multiple attempts to get North Korea to return to talks, and I don't know if people really grasp that concept. North Korea is doing all this while not talking to anyone, not engaging in talks with Seoul to kind of de-escalate things. So there's like no intention to de-escalate, and that's the real problem. North Korea, like developing their nuclear program and things like that, is worrisome enough, but if you had somebody that you had disagreements with and they were like loading up their shotgun or whatever and not even talking to you, you would obviously panic, right? Like, to scale things down. But now we have, and of course, if you've heard any of the podcasts in the past, or if you've not been living on a rock, like Donald Trump and Kim Jong Un have been going back and forth and one upping each other on who can be the most crazy, and so for the most part, it's been kind of quiet. They've been lobbying. I talked about it last week in last week's program that they've been lobbying to get China and Russia to kind of put some pressure on North Korea. You had the UN come in with these new sanctions, or these are probably the harshest sanctions that have been on North Korea in a while. But yeah, after they detonate their new H bomb. But what I read today is a little bit different, and so this is something that's in a different realm, and it's what is it? This is like an attempt or a public declaration that the South Korean military is developing a decapitation unit. And basically, decapitation is you cut the head off. And so they're developing this brigade sized unit of 2,000 to 4,000 soldiers that will be focusing on or training for to go in there and actually take out the leadership in North Korea. Not crazy that that's in the works or that's in the plan, but crazy that it's being declared publicly. Like that's something that kind of sparks interest. I mean, this is something that I read in the New York Times right here. This is an actual article in Business Weekly, I believe. The link will be in the description, but it's referencing an article in the New York Times or a New York Times report. And the reason that's a big deal is because you don't know what that's going to do to Kim Jong-un if he hears like they are really trying to take him individually and people of his cabinet, people of his regime out. So here's the reasoning from Seoul. I think this is I can't remember what was his title. I think he was the military cabinet member here in Seoul. I forgot the name of it. I forgot his actual title. Song Young-moo, though, is the one he's the defense minister. He says, and I'll quote here, the South is trying to freak out its northern neighbor and get it to the negotiation table instead of further developing nuclear weapons. And so that's what this is, an attempt to kind of jar Kim Jong-un to kind of get him to say, okay, I'm going to come to the negotiation table. I don't know how that's going to work. It's a weird thing to imagine that, how he would react to that, because we don't know if Kim Jong-un is just crazy or if he's really just applying like this calculatory, this calculating mentality to what he's doing. I mean, I don't know how this is going to go over, but like if I were in his position, there'd be like no way I'd give up at this point. Like the only way for him to lose is to not develop his nuclear program at this point, because he's almost there, right? And they've been working on it for so long. But this also kind of introduces another threat, and I think this is Jim Mattis who said something about what would happen even if this were to successfully happen, like if South Korea was to go in and take out the leadership of Kim Jong-un, or if that attempt failed, what would happen in retaliation? And you always have to consider the fact that Seoul, the city in which I reside, is within artillery range of North Korea. And so James Mattis, Defense Secretary of the U.S., says it will be a war more serious in terms of human suffering than anything we've seen since 1953. He said it would involve the massive shelling of an ally's capital, which is one of the most densely packed cities on Earth. And that's the thing about Seoul. It's so packed. Like they say, like Korea has a lot of artillery. North Korea has a lot of artillery. And it's not like new stuff, right? Like it's old technology, but it's still effective. And they have so much of it that they can just launch it over nonstop and cause so much damage because there's so many people. There's such a huge, Seoul itself is such a huge target that it causes massive casualties, myself included probably. But that is the major concern. Seoul is right here. Somebody posted the person who shared this on Facebook actually said something along the lines of like this didn't go so well the last time they planned it. I don't know that that could be applied to so many different things, like failed external coups, like failed regime change doesn't always go terribly well as it is. And he may be referring to the previous. I don't know what he was referring to, but there was a movie about a unit that they developed to go in and assassinate Kim Il Sung, I believe. And they did a movie about it. I remember seeing the movie about it. I forgot the name of it. I'll link that up in the comments or link that up and when I update the description. But they ended up they just changed the politics and they ended up getting rid of the unit. And the unit was composed of like criminals and things like that that were promised like inanimate. Was it an anonymity? Anonymity? They promised they'd let their crimes go if they. I look so stupid right there, but they promised they'd let their crimes go if they made it back alive from this suicide mission they were sending them on. And they ended up changing, like the government in South Korea ended up changing. They ended up saying, we're not going to go with this policy. We're going to go, I think probably we're going to go with the sunshine policy. And they got rid of that unit. And in the movie, like the unit and the the unit that was training them, like they kill each other, they attack each other. They find out they're going to get rid of all of them. And it's a sad movie, but it's a really good movie. I'm going to link that up in the description. So that's the update. That's the latest with North Korea. But there was something that I thought was pretty interesting, and that's this comment by this ex-Navy SEAL named Jocko Willink. He's a former Navy SEAL. They asked him on Twitter how would he go about defeating North Korea, or kind of handling. How would he handle North Korea? And there's so many problems. There's so many different ways that people attack it, and it all sounds like a bad idea. And his response was, drop 25 million iPhones on them and put satellites over them with free Wi-Fi. And just, I get his point. It's kind of brilliant the way he says it, because it's like the reason North Korea is the way it is, the reason Kim Jong-un is able to rule with an iron fist, is because the population, it's been said that the population just doesn't know what's going on with the rest of the world. They've been kept in the dark. Their seclusion is how he's able to maintain power. And it's thought that if everybody were to find out what was going on in the outside world, that he wouldn't be able to maintain that power. Eventually, there'd be unrest enough amongst the population that they would go and overthrow the government. Who knows what that would lead to? But because it's still there's been a lot of cases in history of regime change and like an attempt to get rid of the corruption in government by the masses. And you just end up with somebody else corrupt in there because the masses either elect them and put them in there themselves because they're uneducated and unaware of what's the best for them, or they, just that corruption just is sown so deep that people can't get rid of. You can't pull it out by the roots, so to speak. So I mean, this would probably. I mean, if everyone in North Korea was to suddenly become aware of what the outside world is like, you would get rid of Kim Jong-un, yeah. But I don't know if you'd really get rid of the corrupted state that plagues North Korea's government, their type of corruption, because I think all governments are corrupt. But shouts out to Jocko Willink, pretty cool idea. On to other news. This was something that I thought was pretty sad, but I thought provides a little bit of insight of what it's like to be a minority in Korea. And I don't mean a minority as in a foreigner, being black, being white, being Caucasian, or Southeast Asian or other parts of Asia. I mean anybody who's in a situation that the vast majority of Korean people, the Korean population, cannot relate to. And so this is a video of parents kneeling. In this article, a video of parents kneeling triggers emotive debate. And what's going on here in this article is there are parents of special needs children who are lobbying to get a school made. Or I think that the government has made the decision to build a school for special needs children. And so the parents of these children are happy about the school, but on the other hand, the rest of the population, the rest of the city, or the rest of the district, they don't want the school to be built. They are lobbying to get an herbal medicine hospital built there. And the debate is sparked that like which one should we build, and so the parents, the woman kneeling here, this isn't even her child is too old to attend the school that they're trying to build. Like she won't benefit from it at all, but she's kneeling on the behalf of other parents, and it's just if you go read into the comments, everybody's like, stop making a scene, stop overreacting. But this woman had to raise her special needs child on her own or by means of her own, and she's just trying to do what she can to help other parents and further their cause. And so and this hits me close. This hits close to home for me because I have a younger sister with Down syndrome, and I can, it's not that far of a throw from me. But you don't see a lot of special needs people in Korea. I mean, I think Koreans have this like this. They're kind of tribal in how like the society is made up. Like you have like separation by class, separation by regionalism, and once they get past those big borders or those big categorical separations, it's kind of hard to get to see empathy in one group of people for another group of people that they don't identify with very well. And since most, I don't know what the numbers are, but since a lot of Korean people don't have special needs children in their home or don't have the experience of raising a special needs child, they have problems expressing empathy for those who do. And so when I first got here, this has gotten better over time. When I first got here, like there was only like acknowledgement that the blind were blind, right? Like no disabled access in buildings and things like that. This was back in 2001, 2, 3. And like you never saw anything that they didn't put things in place for handicapped people because the vast majority of the population doesn't want to see their tax dollars go to developments for this small, portion of is a relatively small portion of the community. And that's my take on it. If anybody knows a little bit more about that, feel free to chime in. Feel free to leave a comment and kind of talk about it. But I think there are plenty of cases where you can see that that it's funny. Korean people themselves, they have a lot of empathy. I mean, you can watch people will watch a Korean drama. Watch somebody watch a K-drama, for example. Koreans will watch a Korean drama and they'll feel for that fictional character on the screen so much that they're crying and sobbing inside. But I remember walking through Gwanghwamun, which is downtown Seoul, maybe 2 years after the Sewol ferry incident, where the Sewol ferry sunk and I think about 250 people lost their lives in the sinking. And I remember walking on the memorial of that sinking down in Gwanghwamun, and you had people out there with candlelight vigils and things like that. And you heard so many people walking by them saying things like, "You guys are still talking about this?" It had only been like 2 years, and they lost their children. These were like middle school students that were on a field trip, headed on a ferry down south that sank and drowned in the ocean, and it was just crazy how many people were just tired of hearing about it, and vocal about being tired of hearing about it. Just the lack of empathy was amazing, and so I think like Korean people can really empathize with people that are in that within their own category. And I'm generalizing here. I hate to generalize. I mean, it's not everybody, of course, but people can pretty much empathize with people within their own group. And once it gets so far removed from them that they don't really relate to the person that they're trying to show a little empathy with, or that you're asking them to show empathy with, they can't do it, man. It's just like, nah, that's just their problem. That doesn't affect me or anybody I know. And maybe that's not Korean. Maybe that's all over the world. I'm definitely aware that that is the case in America as well. But this does bring in a pretty good debate about like what's the best choice for the most people. Like it depends on your ethics, right? Like if you have a utilitarian ethics, I probably should have looked that up before I started this. But if your cause is to do what's best for the most amount of people, I'm certain you're like, hey, the herbal hospital is a far better choice because it's going to help far more people. I don't know, maybe they can figure something out where they have some kind of program within the hospital that serves special needs children or something along those lines. But that sounds like a stretch, and I'm sure somebody thought about that already. I don't know. This is pretty sad, but hopefully they get something worked out down there. I'll probably provide an update on that in the future. So on to the next thing. Okay. So Jong-hun to offer 5 million won to married couples. So like, if you've been following Korea at all, you're aware that there's this problem in Korea where younger people do not want to get married, they do not want to own homes, and they do not want to have children. And it's having an adverse effect on the population. I think Korea's workforce is aging, and there's like not enough people reproducing, which is crazy because there's babies everywhere. But there's obviously not enough people producing with the amount of people that will retire and exit the workforce within the next maybe 10, 20 years. And so you find that's countrywide. That's a national problem here in Korea, a national concern. But like this smaller town down south, it's got 40,000 people in it, and its population is shrinking. And so they're trying to get people to come there, to get married, build families there, and make a life there to save the city, because the population is crucial to the success of a city. An interesting thing about this, I was just talking about like lack of empathy. There, it says in this article, they don't know if this is going to apply to foreigners or not. So if you got excited, if you happen to live, you have to be one of the 40,000 people that live in Jongin, and you're like dating someone and you're thinking about getting married, they don't know if this is going to apply to foreigners. And with this one, you kind of have to agree with this a little bit, because why do it for someone who is probably going to exit the country anyway? And I don't know. It depends on I think that goes for anybody that lives in a city. They can still take the money and move out, can't they? I mean, the plan is to split the money up. It's 5 million won is basically $5,000, a little bit less. And the plan is to split the cost up into 3 dividends over the next 2 years, or over 2 years after they get married. And it's pretty crazy, because it's like, well, what happens then? Like, can't they just leave and move to Seoul? I mean, that is kind of the problem. Like, the population has this, even if the population wasn't aging, there's this tendency to like move to the nearest big city. And it's the reason they can't decentralize Seoul. They've made so many attempts. The last attempt was like this, maybe not the last attempt, but one that sticks out in my mind was this attempt for like Samsung to go build, maybe it wasn't Samsung, but some big company, some big conglomerate moved out south, built this huge new city and built their structure there, built the infrastructure there, and planned to move out this huge chunk of their company, or their business, their employees. And it was assumed that the workers would move out there, they'd move their families out there, and they'd reside out there, and it'd be like this, big chunk of population taken out and sent out into this area, and other people would follow, and other people would consolidate there. Well, since the KTX arrived, the Koreans like bullet train, since that came into place, like you don't have to move anywhere. You can basically just commute back and forth using the KTX or using the train. The public transportation is amazing. So everybody just commuted. Nobody went down there. Nobody moved down there. They left their families here in Seoul, and they commuted down either on the KTX every day, or they commuted down and had a place to stay down there, and they came back and spent time with their families on the weekend. And that's it's mind-boggling, until I found myself like thinking like, why don't people want to move out of Seoul? I wouldn't mind living in one of these smaller cities. There's still everything you need that's there. Yeah, everything you need, but Seoul has so much more. Like everything you want is in Seoul. Like anything you could possibly want, you can do it at any time of the day. Like you can go out to restaurants. The convenience is just unraveled. I can't even like begin to explain it. And going from here in Seoul out to a town or out to a smaller city where that's not the case, it's repugnant to people. Like nobody wants to move out of Seoul once they move in. So it's weird. It's not a surprise to me that this city is saying like, hey, we'll pay you to get married. We'll pay you to build a family. They even go a little bit further than this. I saw something that said the city's population-sensitive policies also include blind dates with 1 million won for those who become a couple and later marry. So like they got like all kinds of initiatives to get people married and to get people like making babies, man. It's crazy. You wouldn't think that was something that you'd have to go through so much trouble to create. I don't know how this is streaming. Let me just double check this real quick. Their families here in Seoul. Oh gosh. So we're gonna continue on with this. Maybe we'll this. I didn't even record this thing. This is not turning out well. Okay, so we'll jump on to. So this is my quick review of a beauty trend that's happening here. It's not even a review. It's just me mentioning it and pointing it out to you guys because I might. This may be something that uni might be interested in doing, and I'd like to get some feedback from you guys to see what you think about it. It's called glass skin, and this is an article from the Insider. And just K-beauty is so popular, and everyone talks so much about I guess K-pop and K-drama has fueled this real big desire for K-beauty trends, and this one in particular caught my attention. I just happened to come across it this morning. Article was well written. And I don't know. I just took the picture and shared it with you guys. This is actually a picture of someone named Sarah Lee, and she's a co-CEO at Glow Recipe. I'll leave their links and Instagram and things like that online. If you're interested in glass skin, you're a female that's interested in beauty trends, you can go ahead and look this up. Or if you're a guy that's interested in beauty trends, you can go ahead and look this up and get your glass skin on. It's got like the regimens and everything in there, like the whole recipe. And if you're interested in hearing more about that, let me know. I'll talk to Uni a little bit and see if she wants to do a quick piece. My wife, Uni, if she wants to do a quick piece on I don't know, K beauty trends and things like that. If you guys are interested, let me know. So here's something that's pretty funny, and this is a thing: awkward encounters at men's toilets in Korea. And I don't even want to go into like the article that was written up. I didn't even read it. I just know this is a thing. And the first time it happened to me, I walked in the bathroom. I heard somebody in the stalls, and I would think I was on the way up from Wonju or something like that, or on the way down. I was out in the country, and I walked to the bathroom. I heard somebody in the stall, so I knew somebody was in there. But then I walked into the urinal, started using the bathroom, and then the person comes out. I glance back, and it's the cleaning lady, right? And I was like, oh. But I'm midstream, man. So I am not. It's not like I'm gonna stop. And I just kind of stood there, like, okay, well, I don't know how this is gonna work. But her reaction really calmed me down, right? Because she was like, basically just like, yeah, go ahead, keep doing what you're doing. And she starts mopping like right around the urinals, right? And like as I'm using the bathroom, I'm looking at her, and she's like slowly starting at one end of the room, coming down to my urinal, and I'm like, I am curious to see what she's gonna do when she gets to me. And so she gets right by me, pushes my leg, taps my leg, pushes me to the side, and mops as close around my urinal, around my feet, maybe even between my feet, and just goes on about her business. It is really no big deal to the cleaning ladies that a person is in a bathroom using a bathroom. They don't stop. And they act like you're not even there. It is the funniest thing in the world. Well, maybe not the funniest thing in the world, but it's such a weird encounter. It's just and it's funny that they picked it up here, because not only think it's funny that they picked it up here, it happens so often. It happens every day, because they don't never stop cleaning the bathrooms. It does make you wonder, though, hey, are you going to come back and get this spot? Because you really didn't get it very well. I'm standing here. This is actually a scene from a romance TV drama, Big Thing. That's funny. And I'm sure that the ajumas that you see that come in there aren't that attractive. They are old women. And to finish up, I want to talk about the Fire Garden Party Part 2. This is actually happening tomorrow in Itaewon at G15 Sonnendeck. And this party looks like it's pretty live, man. The last one had 500 people show up. There's 120 people going to this one, 497 interested. And the tags are fire dancers, rooftop DJs, live music, new, performance, surprise, glow paint, bucket cocktails, deep house, disco, tech house, and more. God, I want to go to this. It's going to be it's 15,000 won to buy your ticket online. So if you happen to run into this within the next 24 hours, buy your ticket online at the link I'm going to leave here. And $20, 20,000 won at the door. It doesn't sound like it's that pricey, and you get a free drink. and they had like bucket margaritas. Man, bucket margaritas sounds so good. I want to go to this thing so bad. Or bucket cocktails. I want to go to this thing so bad, but I gotta wake up early Saturday morning and go to work. It is uncool. If anybody's going to this, I think my friend Ariel's going to this. I hope she takes pictures and shares and things along those lines. But if anybody out there is going to this, let me know how it turns out. Let me know in the comments. I'm curious to see, because I might go out of my way to make plans to go to the Fire Garden Party 3. So that's it. That's all I got today, guys. I'm so sorry this was late. I'm sorry about the delays that you're seeing in YouTube. This is probably a pretty valuable lesson that I need to learn, because the video is looking pretty terrible. I'll have to figure something out. Facebook turned out a lot better. Maybe it's something that I'm doing on my end. Maybe it doesn't really look that bad. Or maybe it's because I'm viewing it and streaming it, and I didn't record this. So I'm probably going to have the audio, and I'll probably upload that with, I don't know what I'll do. I might upload it as is and just explain in the description that, just understand, guys, if you're watching this, you got to the end of it. It's a test, and I haven't streamed to an event on YouTube before, and I was trying to stream to an event, and I'm using Ustream. I'm using Restream.io, and it isn't really working out the way I thought it was. It started off just fine. I don't know what's going on. Thanks, Josh. Shout out to Josh, who recommended Restream.io. Maybe surprised I'm even on the right thing. I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. I'll be back next Thursday evening at 8:00 with another set of, hopefully with the actual podcast. I'll be back early. I'll go ahead and do some testing this weekend, and I'll talk a little bit about my origin story, how I came to Korea, why I came, and when I came, and what has kind of developed over time, or how my status has changed over time. And then I'll go into, again, the current event story, social media shares and comments and opinions and things like that. Till then, guys, stay interlaced. I'm going to get out of here. I will see you in the next Seoulweaver Webcast. See you then.